Jai Ma, everyone. We are exploring Bhakti Yoga. And in this exploration, I want to stop and look at some key verses defining Bhakti in a special text which was authored by a rishi, a sage called Narada. So they are known as the Sutras or the aphorisms on Bhakti by Narada. Narada Bhakti Sutra. Just like you have Patanjali Yoga Sutra, the style of writing where a cryptic statement is issued, clarifying a whole lifetime worth of knowledge behind that statement is a testimony to the sages who could reduce an entire ocean of knowledge to a few choice words. And this knowledge was recorded in the form of sutra from time to time because sutras are easy to memorize and sutras are easy to convey to the next generation and then to the next, and that way they come to us from thousands of years ago. We do not believe that they were exactly authored by Narada because the sage Narada is a sage who comes across the annals of time in Indian mythology, history, culture, religion, philosophy, and shows up at various times. There was a tradition in India, and it's to an extent it still continues, but it was very, very pronounced during ancient Indian era when students of a certain lineage or a tradition were so sublimated in their ego that they would not give their authorship a name, and they would simply write the name of their Mahacharya, like their great teacher. And that is why not one, but many such examples can be found. For example, there is an Acharya called Vyasa, Vyasa, Vyasa. And he is said to be the author of Mahabharata, which we believe he was. But then they have many other texts credited to Vyasa, for example. Similarly, there are many hymns and other teachings attributed to Narada. And probably it was because they were students of Narada. As for Shankaracharya, if you don't know who is the author, must be Shankaracharya. Because Shankaracharya's students wrote prolifically, their students wrote prolifically. I'm a student of Shankaracharya in the 21st century. I write prolifically. And if we were ever in doubt, we can always say, this is written by Shankaracharya. Because the writing and the communication may be original, but the original teachings and insights are from these exemplary sages. And that is why we remember sages like Vyasacharya and Shankaracharya, for example, in my lineage. Narada is more of a sage from the pure bhakti tradition. And Narada's Bhakti Sutras is something that I, as a teacher of nondual Advaita, can resort to bring clarity into my bhakti teachings. The bulk of my bhakti teachings from now, I'm talking in September 2024 until December of 2024, will be based upon some source texts and some very special verses, and a bulk of them would be sourced from the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is a much older text, much older, thousands of years older than the Narada Bhakti Sutras, and also more complex because the Bhagavad Gita not only conveys Bhakti Yoga beautifully throughout in every chapter, but also it is a landmark book for Jnana Yoga, for Karma Yoga, and for Upasana Yoga. So all these yogas can be found within Bhakti Yoga. In fact, if you were to think, oh, what about the Kundalini Shakti? Oh, let me go find something there. What about vocal yoga, Swara Yoga, or breath yoga, or Japa Yoga, the vocal yoga? Oh, let me go find something in Bhagavad Gita, because the Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses distilled on the great yogic path of wisdom. Whereas the Narada Bhakti Sutras are only 84 verses and they are only focused on the bhakti path. Then you may wonder why I chose to convey only few verses from the Narada Bhakti Sutras versus all of them. And the reason for that is that my teachings are steadily anchored in the non-dual tradition of teaching. There is we can do the duality-based bhakti teachings where the God figure or God phenomena is separate from the human phenomena, which is how all religions operate. And that is the fundamental level, and it absolutely makes sense at one level. When we are a body, then we are definitely separate from Ishvara. Then there is the qualified duality, where we are an aspect. We are different, but we are still connected. And when we become the mind, but the pure mind, then we are more connected at that level. But when we are talking at an absolute level, at the level of ourself, at the level of consciousness, which is our true source, then at that level, there is no difference. And then the body can do its own thing and the mind can do its own thing, and neither of them need to get the act together. But the Atma always is, will be, and has been an eternal oneness with Ishvara. And that divine truth dwells within each one of us, unsullied. And the whole human adventure then becomes a process of discovery of that inner light. And this is the non-dual tradition, Advaita, Edvaita, Advaita. Advaita means two, means more than one, and Advaita means not two. So it's a negative way of saying one. And we can say oneness, that I convey the tradition of oneness. But the traditional way is to deny. Why say Advaita? Because what we perceive is always Dvaita, right? Duality. We perceive it, don't we? But Advaita is what we know through knowledge that is revealed. And we cannot ever see Advaita, we cannot ever see oneness, but we can know it to be the eternal truth. We only see, two-ness and more-ness, but the reality is Advaita. And Narada's Bhakti Sutras are not specifically a teaching on Advaita, but they definitely have beautiful verses and sections which illuminate everyone's path. So in our journey on Bhakti Yoga, those of you who began with me many more months ago, before September 24, 2024, for you also, this will be a beautiful bouquet of verses. And for those of you who are joining me brand new, or shall join me in the future, for you also, these verses will give you a beautiful settling in. And it doesn't matter, wherever you are in your life, these verses are so expressive and so beautiful. And the beautiful part about this is that by teaching you bhakti through the verses now, I am going to show you that what I have been speaking up till now is very much tethered in the tradition. And how in my own life as a spiritual teacher, I want to use every day that I am still in this body in the service of these Vedic source texts and to bring them out in the world and to show how relevant they are in this century more so than ever. We shall be presenting you with a deck that you can watch each verse as I talk about it. Just give me a setup. Give me a moment as I get set up. Yeah. I thought this image was really interesting of spiritual teacher in a feminine body teaching a spiritual seeker in a feminine body. So I wanted to share that with you. And we are now looking at what is bhakti. And like I said, we have already been discussing about bhakti. My bhakti teachings are on YouTube. My bhakti teachings are in your heart. But we are spending some more time exploring bhakti from the Narada Bhakti Sutra. So let us begin with the first verse itself. I could have skipped the first verse, but then it is always good to begin with that first verse because we're going to stick to the first 9. And let me just chant before I begin teaching you from the Vedic source text, the Shastra. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace Peace. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Om Shri Rishibhyo Namaha. Athato Bhaktim Vyakhyasyamaha. This word athato is very important. It means now. Now, therefore, because we've been talking, we shall expound on bhakti. So this word now, when a text begins with this word now, athaha, athato means now, therefore, bhaktim, vyakyasyamaha, vyakya means to expound upon. Now, therefore, because we've been discussing it earlier, we shall expound on bhakti. We have given you the introduction. We shall give you bhakti. And we just love the texts in the tradition that begin with this word, athato. Right? Because it means they are part of an ongoing conversation. Look up Patanjali Yoga Sutras and look up the first word of the first sutra, and you shall find the same word. Why? Because the Yoga Sutras of the Patanjali were also written in a context of verbal teaching, verbal discussion. So this Sutra sets the stage for an exploration of bhakti, the supreme practice of loving devotion, that we are about to dive into that learning. Now let us look at the second verse, and I would like you to chant this with me. Sa tvasmin prema rupa. So this is the definition of bhakti. Sa tvasmin prema rupa. What is bhakti? Bhakti is the highest form of prema. And right here in this series of teachings, I have spoken hours on prema. Rupa means form. It is the highest form of what? Sa tasmin param prema rupa. So now you understand the relevance of param here. It is not ordinary love, but the definition is param prema rupa. It is, param means the highest, the love for the supreme, the love for the ultimate divine entity. We don't know what that entity is. It is formless, boundless. It can also take on a form. It can take boundless forms. It is beyond time. It can also show up in time. It can warp time. It is the ultimate intelligence. And this is param prema rupa. It is the highest form of love. Bhakti is not ordinary love, but the highest form of love. Param prema rupa. And it is a love that, because it is param, it is supreme. It is unconditional love towards the divine. It is not love with expectations or dependency. It is just love, just love. Well, what is ordinary love then? If it is not param love, it is just ordinary samsaric love. And what love is that? That love is typically an emotional attachment, which we call love, isn't it? And if we investigate that emotional attachment, then that typical human love is based on some conditions which that other person is meeting for us, and hence we love them. There is some gain that we are having, tangible or non-tangible, because of which there is love. If that ends, the love also fades away. So that love is transactional. And hence, what is driving that attachment, dependency, is ego. It's okay. We don't have to feel like we're monsters because we have that kind of love, but we have to understand that there is another kind of love possible. And what is that love? It is param love. It is param prema. It is param prema towards that paramatma, towards that ultimate atma. Although the word Paramatma is not in this verse, it defines bhakti. Then what is that bhakti? When we love with that soulful entirety of our beings. And what do we love? That object is, the kind of love is from the soul, not from the ego. And what is the object of that love? That object, though not mentioned here specifically, what is that object? It is the highest form of love for the divine. It is the highest form of love for the divine.